Hey everyone, Simon and Alex here with Top Tennis Training, and in this video we're going to show you how to serve and volley in 5 simple steps.
Now the serve and volley has become sort of a dying art in the modern game, and we'll discuss exactly why later. But we'll look at the serve and volley in more detail and show you those 5 steps so you can improve your game today.
Now before we get into step 1, if you haven't subscribed to the channel but you're serious about improving your game, then make sure you click on that subscribe button and you turn on the notification bell.
So step number 1, we're going to look at the serve and what makes the serve really important in the serve and volley.
But also the direction of your serve.
So remember, you want to make your serve as difficult as possible for your opponent. It doesn't have to be the fastest serve, but making it difficult for your opponent to hit a return on target and hit a return away from you is what you're looking for.
So when you're serving on the deuce side, you have 3 main options with that serve. I can go out wide into my opponent's forehand, I can go into their body, or I can go down the tee. And within each target I can also mix up the pace and the spins that I use. So for example, out wide on the forehand, I can hit it flatter, or I can go with more slice. Now the flatter I hit the ball, the faster it's going to reach my opponent, and the faster it's going to likely come back. So in general, I'm going to be serving down the tee on this deuce side, and I'm going to be using either the flat or the kick. Now to keep my opponent guessing, I'll still use that slice serve just to keep them honest so they don't start to read my play. Now a great tactic to use is jamming the player up with a body serve. So if I hit a flat serve into my opponent's body, or a slice serve into their backhand that then curves into their body, then it makes it very hard for them to get out of the way and hit an effective return, and hopefully that gives me an easier volley. Now a simple way for you to instantly improve that serve and volley and get closer into the net is to change your ball toss. So in general, if my ball toss would land around the baseline or just a few inches inside the court, that's okay for when I'm staying back. But if I really want to put my body weight and create that forward momentum, I'm now going to try to toss the ball and make contact a few feet inside the court. This will make it much easier for me to build that forward momentum and really get me going into the net.
So on the ad side, the principles are exactly the same. Here I'm going to try and go down the tee. I'm trying to go a little bit more of a slice tee so that the ball is moving away from him. I don't want to give him a ball in the slot on the forehand because then I'll be in trouble. I want to get that ball moving away from him, as far away from him as possible, and then get close to the net to cover those angles. Now let's try the ad side into the backhand. Now this is a very useful tactic to use because most players hate their backhand. So if you're going into the backhand side, it makes it difficult because they're using their weakness to try and get the ball into your feet, I guess, or make it difficult for you. And if you can even kick the ball a little bit and make it high for that player, either on a two-hander or a single-hander, it also becomes a very difficult shot to return effectively. Again, so what you want to try and do is make it tough for them on that return, on that backhand side, and that's why I'm going to go into the backhand on my serve. You can now download our serve PDF, where you can learn more about the serve and have a real breakdown step-by-step process on how you can improve your serve. So you can download it now by clicking the card above, or if that's not coming up, the link under the video.
So step 2 is now all about those first few steps prior to actually doing that split step.
Now the steps have to be as big as possible. Remember, you're trying to cover as much ground in as few steps as possible. And this is vital for your net game, because if you are split stepping in the middle of the court, if you've just made small steps and you're split stepping there, it makes your first volley almost impossible. You're going to have to volley up. Even if you hit a great volley, the opponent has a lot of time to deal with that volley. So you want to get as close to the net as possible within those few steps after the serve. So those big steps, and even the split step is a forward split step, and often you'll see players doing the stutter split step where they'll land and push off at the same time. So you're trying to save time as much as possible, so while the ball is flying from your strings to the opponent's side, at that same time you're moving in and closing that net down.
Also remember, it's very important that the direction of the serve is where your body is going. So if I serve out wide, I have to have those first few steps in that direction for me to actually cover my down the line.
Now this is exactly why the tee serves are the preferred option for most pros, because you're not giving any angle to your opponent, and it's very easy for you to get into that middle of the court position and then cover all the angles. It's very difficult for the opponent to dip the ball into the feet. It's difficult for the opponent to find an angle to pass you. So you have to be looking out for the lob, but it's a lot easier to do if you've served the ball down the tee.
Now remember, before you make your split step, you'll have maybe time for 2 or 3 steps after you land. So you're landing off the serve, and if you've tossed the ball inside the court, hopefully you're landing a couple of feet inside the baseline. As you land, you now have 1, maybe 2 steps if the returner is taking the ball on the rise or taking the ball early, or 1, 2, 3. So those steps you have to master, and you have to work on those patterns so it becomes natural and second nature to you.
Now, when you're landing on that serve, because we land on that left foot, so if you're a right-handed player, when you're serving and then landing on the left foot, it's important that you're continuing that body momentum to make sure that the next step is that right foot. So it's land on the left, big step with the right. And that's the best way of covering that ground, is to make sure that that first step is vital and it's big and it's strong. So now you've served, you're transitioning into the net, and this is where most of the players get it wrong, is the split step. And the reason being is their split step is too static. Now what do I mean? When you split step, you want to continue moving after the split step. Just because you've split step, it doesn't mean that's where you're going to hit your volley. So a lot of the players will split step, but then also continue moving after that split step, because you've still got time. Remember, you're split stepping when the opponent makes contact with the ball, but between the time that they've made contact and the ball getting to you, you've still got that split second to even cover more ground, get closer to the net, and give yourself a chance to knock off a volley and make it a lot easier.
Another major issue that a lot of players do when they're coming forward on that serve and volley is they forget about the split step. They sprint in as quickly as they can, and they have no way of actually changing direction. If you've hit that serve and come forward, if you don't have that split step, now the opponent can lob you very easily. They can pass you on either side because your momentum is going forward. It's now very hard for you to change direction into the forehand volley, into the backhand volley, or going back for that lob.
It's important that you're split stepping and going on the balls of your feet here, on your toes, rather than being on your heels. It's very tough to push off when you're on your heel. When you're on your toes, it's very easy to push off straight away. So the best split step is staying on your toes and then moving out into the direction. the best volleyers will also push out with the outside leg. So this means that they get to cover more ground and get to reach further balls if they step out with the outside leg. Now after the split step, if I'm going to the forehand side, I'll use my right foot first. So I'll step with the right foot and then the left foot. Now this is important because if I'm just split stepping and then going across, this is as far as I can go, because don't forget the volley, you always try and volley with the opposite leg, right? So the right foot will have a left foot going forward. Now if that's the only move that I've got after the split step, I'm going to be covering maybe 1 meter to both directions, which makes it very easy for the opponent to pass me. But if I'm doing the outside leg first, I've now got 2 steps before I've got to hit that volley. So split step, open, and then go. Same thing on the backhand. I'm going to split step, open, and then go. So it makes reaching those wide balls a lot easier. And that's why you see the stutter steps of some of the pro players, is they actually split step at the same time and then do that open step towards the volley, which makes their volley a lot easier. They're saving time and they're also continuing moving forward into the shot. So it's like you're carrying your body momentum into the direction where you gotta go, not just simply stopping, planting yourself, and then not able to move to the ball. Now before we get on to the next step, you can continue learning all areas of the game in our VIP section that's now open on our website. You can find the link either in the card above or the link under the video.
Step 4 is now all about that first volley. Now it's all going to depend on where you are on the court and the type of return that you receive. Now if the opponent hits a good return and you're hitting the ball around medium height or even low, in general you'll treat it like an approach shot. So in general you go down the line because now you're covering the line, you don't have much ground to move into before your next volley. Once again, if I'm hitting my first volley around that service line, especially if it's medium height or low, I'm treating it like that approach shot, so I'm mostly going back down the line. You can aim into the opponent's weaker side. So if my opponent has a weak backhand, that first volley, I can go into that backhand and then force them to pass me off that weaker wing.
Now it also depends on how close you were able to get to the net. Now if you're really close to the net, all of a sudden all the angles are open to you. So you can actually knock off volleys and create a lot of angle, put those balls away. Now it's important when you are going down for those balls that you're not going down with your body. Everything starts with the legs. So I try and keep my body as upright as possible, but I'm trying to stay low here and I try to get down with my legs, and I'm trying to avoid that racket dropping. This racket dropping will make it very difficult to hit an effective volley. You'll end up hitting the ball up, the ball is going to float. You want to be able to be low so that you have full control. You can cut, you can go across the ball more, so that it becomes a lot easier to control the ball, and you can take that power off a lot easier. It's very difficult to take power off when your racket has dropped below the line of your hand. So use those legs to get as low as possible. It's vital for that first volley.
And step 5 is now closing in on the net and trying to win that point, trying to finish that point with that second or third volley.
Now obviously after you've hit your first volley, it doesn't stop there. So you have to position yourself correctly in order to hit your next volley. Now what does that mean? If I hit the ball down the line, I will stay in this half of the court and I'll protect that down the line, because the down the line is the shot that I'm most vulnerable to, because if the ball goes cross court from that side, I can cut across the line of the ball. So if you imagine a line going across like this, if I step forward, I will cut across that line. So the ball will always go across me, which makes it easier for me to get that ball, unless the player's obviously dipped it into my feet. Now the down the line, I'm always the same distance from the down the line. So I'm very vulnerable to that shot. So if I'm in the middle here, and that player's standing in the corner, that down the line shot becomes very easy. So I want to stop that from happening. I never want to get past down the line unless they've hit it on the line. you know, then I say too good, and I say do it again. But I want to get into this position. So if I volleyed my first volley from here, cross court, I now have to get into this position to cover that down the line. And the same thing happens if I hit the ball into the other side. I now have to get into the same position, but on the other side. So I'll get into here and cover that down the line again. So once you've hit that first volley, if my first volley goes into the direction where Simon is, he has options on the return, right? He can go down a line or he can go cross court. Now if I position myself here, it becomes very difficult for him to pass me down the line because I can make 1 and 2 and I close the down the line. But similarly, if he goes cross court, yes, it looks like there's a big space cross court, but the ball is coming across my body. So even if he hits the ball cross court, I can use 2 steps and I'm there. So 2 steps from here, going across, actually covers a lot of the court. So if I think about 1, then 2 and stick my racket out, if we draw a line from where Simon is, I cover most of the court apart from maybe over here. So this side of the court maybe is not covered if he hits an unbelievable topspin return, but any topspin passing shot, but any other shot, I cover it because of my positioning. So even a ball that's a little bit further wide that I have to reach for still becomes acceptable. I can still make it. So position yourself on this side of the court after that first volley. If it goes on that side, it's the same thing applies if I hit to the other side. I also position myself on the other side of the court. So it becomes very easy to come across because I'm moving forward and across. So I cut off a lot of that angle. The closer you are to the net, the more of the angle you cut off, the easier the volley becomes and the less of the court you're showing to your opponent.
Now ideally you want to get around 6 to 8 feet behind the net, so away from the net. If I move in too close to the net, that lob then becomes very easy for the opponent to exploit me on. But I still want my body weight going forward, and as Alex said, the closer I get, the more angles open up to me, and then I can start putting those higher balls away for the winners.
Now don't forget, this is where you split step. It's not where you actually make contact with the volley, and that's very important. Now if I split step here, I still have that time, remember, from when the opponent hits it to when the ball reaches to me to make another 2 steps and then be able to get closer to the net. So just because you're looking out for being lobbed, for example, and split stepping here, you can still close that net down if you haven't seen that lob. So it's very important that you don't feel like just because I'm split stepping here, I'm now not able to move between my split step and the shot. This is where the time for me to close that net down. So you can still be hitting the balls close to the net and opening up those angles, but split stepping here because I'm moving in after my split step, and it's very important.
If your opponent hits a good return and they force you to pick up with a half volley, that's okay. Expect that. You're not going to win every single point that you have when you're doing the serve volley. So on this point, I'm really going to focus on throwing the ball inside the court. So I'm going to see how far in front I can throw that ball and still hit the ball in that nice way. If you can pull this off, it will really pull your body towards the net and it will make that transition much, much easier. Now if I choose to serve out wide into the opponent's forehand, I have to make sure that my momentum is moving that direction to cover the down the line shot. Now here I'm going to try and focus on hitting a kick serve down the tee into my opponent's backhand side. Being a one-hander, it's harder for them to get over the top of that ball, so most likely he's going to chip it, and the chip is likely to float much more than a drive. Now often when you serve out wide, you're almost teasing the opponent to go down the line, and you can almost give them that space initially and then move in to cover that down the line. When you serve out wide, if the opponent is in the tram lines, one of your options is hitting that drop volley into the open space, because now they have a lot of ground to cover to actually reach that first shot. And like there, when you do get a high one, make sure you're creating that momentum. You never actually stop. You're doing your split, but you carry on and you're going forward with your body weight.
So here it's okay to go back behind because he's moving into that direction. If I get a high ball, the down the line forehand that I hit would be the best option. It's going back behind him, opposite way that he's moving, and I've got the shortest distance to cover between myself and the net. The ball will bounce and move away from him, so it's a good option to use. Now if you get close enough to the net and the ball is floatier, now I've got a lot of time, I close the net down and I can use that angle and I put it away. So here my movement is towards that right side of the court, so I'm moving towards where I've just served the ball. If I get the ball high, I'm trying to play away from him. I can see that he's stuck in that corner, so I'm going to play away from him. It was quite an easy volley to put away. So you'll only go back behind if you have a player that's recovering very quickly after the return, or you've served into that direction where they're more in the middle of the court, because if you go back behind and they're there, they're going to pass you in the next one because you're not going to be in a good position. If you can get that ball to kick and get that player even further out of the court, it becomes very difficult for him to pass you. What you have to do is cover that down the line, and then anywhere that the ball comes, you've pretty much got an open court to hit into. So use that topspin kicker to great advantage because it also gives you enough time to get close to the net. Use the serve to jam that player up on the backhand. So you're looking for a slice serve, but get it onto the backhand side. So they're set up for the backhand, and all of a sudden the ball starts drifting into their body. Usually the player will just get the ball back. They try and just make that ball, and if you're serving volleying on that serve, just like you saw there, it becomes quite an easy put away. So you give yourself the best chance to hit the volley by making that serve uncomfortable for the player on the other side. Now here, I got the ball onto the forehand, so I didn't hit my great serve. It's set up for him. He was able to hit a shot into my feet. I didn't hit a good first volley, so I backed off, and I was almost like a goalkeeper hoping that I'll get play on it, and I ended up being fast enough with my hands. But the main thing is actually just make that ball, even if it's in your feet. You gotta make it. Don't try and do too much with it. Ask another question. So there, I found the backhand. The ball came in low. He's hit a great return. Because I was moving into that position, I was able to come across because it was going into my backhand. It was going across the side of my body. So all I had to do was redirect the ball down the line, make it as simple as possible, show as much racket head, as much racket string to the ball, redirect it down the line. It makes it very difficult for the player to hit the next one. Notice how I also positioned myself to the left side of the court to make sure that even if he hits it down the line, I'm there. So he sees the angle's all covered, he's on the run, and he has to come up with something, and that's what forces the mistake most of the time.
So there you go, 5 steps to the serve and volley. Now if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you click on that like button, subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you turn on that notification bell so that YouTube will let you know whenever we release a new lesson.